Okay, good afternoon everybody again, and welcome to the Local Vision Roundtable. I'm delighted by our guests here today. They all come from different sectors of Kingston business life, and they all play a very significant and influential role in the different areas which they serve. I'm really looking forward to this. We have been looking at some questions, and just so we can unpick some of these key questions as we look forward to the rest of the year. There are a lot of healthy conversations and opening of partnerships over the last year, and I think it's going to be very interesting to get the insights from everybody here involved today. So I'm going to very quickly go around and introduce everybody. So I'll start with Bob Cattaneo.
Good afternoon. I'm Bob Cattaneo, the Managing Director of Cattaneo Commercial, and we're involved with commercial property in Kingston Town Centre and surrounding areas.
Thank you, Bob. Jen Edwards.
Hi, I'm Jen Edwards. I'm Director of Public Affairs and Insight at Kingston University, and good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, Jen. And Robin, just as he's taking his tea.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I'm Robin Hutchinson, and here today being the community brain.
Thank you. And Ian.
I'm here today being the council brain. So I'm Ian Thomas. I'm the Chief Executive of the Royal Borough of Kingston. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Ian. Kirsten.
Hi everybody, I'm Kirsten Henley, Chief Executive of Kingston First. We operate and work with around 750 businesses and organisations in Kingston Town Centre. Thank
you, Kirsten. Jim.
Hi everyone, I'm Jim Coleman. I am Head of Economics at a company called WSP, which is a global engineering-led and multidisciplinary advisory company. I lead the economics team there, and I'm also a resident of Kingston Borough.
Thank you, Jim. And Robert.
Hello, yeah, I'm Robert O'Dowd. I'm the Chief Executive of the Rose Theatre. I come to you live from a car park in St Ives.
Thank you, Robert. And if he does kind of lean further backwards, I don't think we're entertaining him enough in his car. So I'm going to lead on the first question, which some of these questions are going to go to individuals which are more kind of bespoke to what their areas of concern. But this is a fairly broad one, because I think all of us have seen the benefit over the last year of the partnerships. So the question really is, partnerships will be an increasingly important in developing a local vision for Kingston. How can this positively influence the future of Kingston? And I'd like to start this with Jen, because the university is a really significant player in the borough, and their reach and breadth is quite impressive. So Jen, how do you approach this?
Thanks, Forbes. Can I just check, can everyone hear me properly? Because I've just seen in the chat that there was an issue with sound. So if anyone...
You are loud and clear. Can. Yes, you are loud and clear. Thank you, Jen.
Good, excellent. So thank you for the introduction. The university historically prides itself on the integral role that we play with the local community. And then we recognise also the challenges that have been brought about even prior to the pandemic, but certainly since, are all shared challenges, and we all need to work together to meet them. So I think if I start with the pandemic, the university was very keen that we worked very closely with our partners, with the borough, and particularly on the public health aspects, to ensure that we could play our part to really support in the effort. We did that in a number of ways, through providing PPE to the hospital and care homes, but also we looked to support with a testing centre, which not only is for our staff and students, but also for the local community. And we also have a vaccination centre that we work on with our GP partners. And to date, I think we calculated the other day, we've done over 13,000 vaccinations, which is incredible. So I think that's just testament to the hard work of all the partners involved in that. And what we've been talking about recently is really how we build on that. And it's been really positive to see how everyone's come together and strengthen as we respond to the pandemic, and also work on collaborative and I think innovative solutions to serve the wider community. We've done a lot of work with the Council's Economic Recovery Task Force and obviously through the Kingston Strategic Partnership, and these groups have been meeting throughout the pandemic to really bring together all our key partners and see how we can support. In terms of our impact in the borough, as Forbes said, it's incredibly wide-ranging. We have our new building townhouse, which unfortunately opened just when the pandemic hit, so I'm conscious that many of you won't have been in there yet. But the idea is that this building will provide community space, performance space. It houses our central library, which is open to the community, and it's really designed to bring everyone into the university and really break down any barriers that exist. We're also working on our estate vision, which we're going to be launching towards the end of this year, and that's really cementing the vision for the university and how we see our estate working for the next 10 to 20 years. And looking at what the pandemic's taught us about how we use buildings, how we use space, and also how we look to shared working solutions within the town centre as well. And that's something that's discussions that are really quite interesting going on at the moment. We also have very strong relationships with a number of schools around the borough and around Surrey. I think we work with over 350 schools and colleges to really ensure that we're providing the opportunities for young people, not just for university, but also just to expand their knowledge. And then we also work very closely with businesses. We're really excited that Unilever is going to be having their global HQ in Kingston, which is great for everyone. And we're working with them at the moment to look to see how we can provide new opportunities to help retain our graduate talent within the borough. And I think having a major employer like that coming in is going to be a really, really strong support to doing so. And we're also recognised at a national level in many ways, which helps put Kingston on the map. And we're sector leading for our work on equality, diversity and inclusion, which brings students and staff with different backgrounds into Kingston. And we're also about to start a campaign to support creative education. So that's really, in a nutshell, some of the things that we've been doing.
Thank you very much, Jen. I'm sure that could have been expanded considerably further. Can I go to Ian? And some of those things like Unilever you probably touch on, but I think this period has really changed the council's working dynamic, and same for the officers there. Do you want to elaborate on this further?
Yeah, certainly, Forbes. And we've always had an eye on what is to be when we've been working through the eye of the storm during the height of the pandemic. What's left on the beach when the tide is out, the analogy that springs to mind. And what we've anticipated as the potential impact of the deepest recession in peacetime history, and in particular on our local economy here in Kingston. In Kingston, we have 96,000 jobs with an over-reliance, I would say, on retail and wholesale. That's 38%. And 38% of these jobs are also part-time situations. 24,000 are furloughed in the borough. And we've seen a higher increase of universal credit applications when compared to the London average at plus 130%. Kingston has a well-qualified population with a higher number of people qualified to level 4 or above, but most leave the borough to earn money in places like the city in Canary Wharf, and we see a net migration of 9,000 daily, with 36,000 travelling in and 45,000 leaving to occupy higher paid roles. So given all of that, we assess that the impact of the pandemic on Kingston will result in a widening socio-economic inequalities, a widening of those inequalities for women, young people, the most deprived, disabled citizens, and those from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. And when you overlay all of this, Forbes and colleagues, with the health priorities pre-pandemic that remain, such as obesity, respiratory diseases, cancers, and the precarious state of local government finance, the need for collaboration to support the socio-economic system comes into sharper focus. So rather than retreat to a dark corner and rest on our laurels. The council's been working hard, and you've talked about Unilever choosing Kingston as its global HQ. It's a fantastic opportunity to improve the quality of jobs in the borough. Some people, economists on the call, may know, given what I've said with regard to the composition of jobs, we have a lower economic GVA value per job when compared with the rest of London. The 2,000 high quality jobs that will be attracted into the town centre as a result of the Unilever development will increase that GVA value. There's the £800 million development of the Cambridge Road estate, a bold decision to explore the alternative use of the Guildhall site, which, subject to member approval, will see the creation of new homes, a high-grade flexible commercial space, and a heritage-led regeneration scheme that will see potentially the repurposing of the iconic Guildhall to become a place that will attract more people into the town centre in a new sustainable setting. Further, we are planning to invest in the public realm to enhance the beauty of the place, enhancing the experience of visitors by better connecting the town to its riverside scene. We're working with John Lewis to bring the Undercroft and partners, on this call, proud to be a partner of Creative Youth, to completely regenerate and bring to life the Undercroft with the Factory of Futures project, subject to member approval, building a new leisure facility. The list goes on. And economists have talked about whether the bounce back, bounce forward, whatever you want to call it, will be V-shaped or W-shaped or other letters of the alphabet. We are seeing the genesis of a V-shaped recovery in Kingston, and I don't think that's a coincidence, Forbes. I think that's as a result of all of us working together and really working optimistically on a proposition that will continue to attract inward investment into our fine place.
Thank you, Ian. You mentioned the word beach, and which segues very nicely to Robert, who, for those who haven't worked out, is in a car in St Ives near a beach. Robert, from the Roses perspective, the nature of the partnerships, I think the same with Bob, and I'll come to Bob afterwards. There's kind of a Kingston and then a very outwards facing need of partnerships. How would you view the role of partnerships over the last year and how we can go forward for Kingston?
I mean, to me, I think it's more an expectation of growing partnerships. If there are a few good things to come out of the pandemic, one is that we've all had to review how we work together. And I think that being able to work more constructively with various groups and with the community is essential as we all reopen, particularly in the arts, because the arts have benefited from a lot of government support, both through the Cultural Recovery Fund and the furlough scheme. We've been, heavy recipients of that funding. But I think it sets to us an example that as we reopen, 28th of June, put it in your diaries, building those partnerships with local communities across the whole borough, I think will be essential. I think there's another interesting shift that might happen, building on what Ian just said, that if there is a change in working patterns, I think people will hopefully work from home, not every day, but more. And I think that will transform Kingston Town Centre between those sort of dead hours between sort of 6 and 8. I think Kingston struggles between 6 and 8. It becomes a ghost town and then it refills up again. If people are genuinely working from home more, and it would be interesting to hear Bob's view on that, then their local town centre, rather than being London, will be Kingston. We know as a theatre, or we're hoping as a theatre, to benefit from that, because we will then genuinely become their local theatre. And when they want to go to the theatre and they finish working at 7:15, they walk on the road and the theatre is the Rose rather than all the West End theatres. But back to the partnership theme, to me, I think the Cambridge Road Estate, we've been working with Cambridge Road Estate. I think too often the borough is in pockets. And I think if coming out of this, we can draw people together, not necessarily with a common view, because that's almost impossible, but if we draw people together and build back, the economic side of it, the economic partnerships, using culture and heritage as the heart of what we're doing, I think that's hugely exciting. Despite the appalling impact that COVID's had, I think there are hopefully some benefits that we can draw out of it.
Thank you, Robert. And just to quickly go over to Bob, because I spoke to Bob a good year and a half ago, to be honest. And the one thing which I was really struck is the nature of Bob's work is that he's a great kind of first point of contact for businesses who are looking to work into Kingston. And he's always been a great advocate for Kingston. And I was always struck with that sort of dynamic, that you've been a great salesperson for the borough. How have you seen, we talked about it a little bit before we started, about the partnerships and how this can positively influence Kingston going forward?
Well, Forbes, it's quite interesting that I do cover a lot of sectors, particularly in the commercial property sector, and we are beginning to see the bounce back that Ian referred to. It has occurring, and that does relate to the way that companies are beginning to review very much in the office sector about their future needs. And one thing that became very obvious to us throughout this particularly difficult period was the amount of companies that were beginning to review whether they wanted to commute into places like central London, and whether there was more of a benefit to be operating from towns such as Kingston in Greater London, which are particularly offered a more easier connectivity for the work that they required. You must remember that pre-COVID, the commercial market wasn't in great shape. There was some areas of confidence that was lacking, and frankly, the retail sector was obviously finding the market very tough through online shopping. There was a lot of retail units in the centre of Kingston that at that particular time were vacant, and we've now seen, in particular, as a result of the pandemic, some changes already occurring, and I think this may very well we may very well now look at how this may coordinate with the partnerships. Certainly smaller retail has revived quite noticeably, and there are a lot of startup companies that have approached us over the last 12 months who have been looking to set up new businesses or reimagining themselves in businesses, and again have been focused in this area, and importantly have been taking premises. Understandably, a lot of office occupiers are still going through the question of rationalisation of their requirements, and in particular working from home and how this might can coordinate with their needs. But we're also the feedback I'm getting from a lot of businesses, interestingly, is that the working from home is now beginning to have from their staff a second view, and a lot of the staff, particularly in the younger people, are now looking to get back into an office environment because they do need that question of meeting people, of connecting, and I think that's beginning noticeably to change, and it may well be the view taken on again the office market in this area. We've got some great assets in Kingston. We talk about the partnerships. This is a town that's got a great tradition. It's got also this. It's got the university, which is a great connector for employment. In the arts, it's got some great attractions. And I think, and the positive news with what is occurring with Unilever and with the revival that we're seeing with this bounce back in the commercial market will, in my view, greatly assist the retail sector in the town, and more importantly, the hospitality sector, which has really been obviously struggled through the pandemic. Generally, I'm very much of the view that this air of confidence, as long as things do not, as long as there's no great changes, will continue to occur, and all the various organisations in the town will be able to relate further and enhance that growth.
That's really encouraging, and it's really valuable to hear that perspective which you have. That leads us actually quite nicely. You used the word reimagining, which kind of segues into the next question, which is about placemaking and reimagining, and particularly in terms of the culture, the community and creativity which we have in Kingston. I want to kind of move on to Robin and Kirsten with this. I'll start with Robin first. In terms of the people listening today, can you just explain your perspective, because you do a lot more kind of community work than certainly we do as a chamber or whatever, but placemaking, reimagining, there's a lot which you're trying to do down in Tolworth, and then I'm going to come to Kirsten and Jen to follow up on this question as well. So Robin, can I start with you on this?
Sure, and thank you. So we've been very lucky. We've been able to play in Tolworth and in Surbiton and increasingly in Chessington and Hook. And I think to put this in the context of where the discussion you've just had, I think we've had partnerships of necessity, and now we can have partnerships of ambition. And I think that's the big changeover. We all know that in a disaster we'll band together. This is the opportunity of what it is we want to see as we step forward. And I think the biggest thing that we have witnessed is the capacity and the brilliance of people where they live and their relationship that has developed with their locality. I think we're all very conscious, and the evidence is there, that people have either established or re-established a much stronger sense of the importance of green space and open space, their local shopping centres, the facilities that are around. And the question mark will come, how long will that relationship last, and what can we do to support it? Because actually, in terms of small business, local business, the real thing is around that relationship. And I just think that we've got this magical opportunity. It's a terrible thing that has happened, but the way we can step forward will be about the building on people's capacities and capabilities. And that's why we're seeing such a drive in startups, etc. I don't think it's going to be an either or, work from home or go into the office. I think we're going to get a hybrid way of working where people will begin to make choices. And I think Robert's point about, again, people's relationship with where they live and how they populate it is important. We've tended historically to, as a borough, to have a very town centre centric view, and that's even come up already in this conversation. And I think that we need to look at actually the benefits of the whole borough, because there is something quite remarkable about the sentence that says all you need on your doorstep, and that's actually what our borough can offer. But more importantly, it's actually what we can do within southwest London and how sticky we can make the borough. And what we're finding and what we've found over the last few years is people wanting to move to areas that have a good story around them, that have a good atmosphere, that have a good environment. And I think that's the biggest change we're going to make. There's a real danger that we will return back to a top-down form, that actually those above know best. And actually what we've witnessed is it's people in their homes, in their communities that have got some fantastic answers and fantastic questions. And I think whatever we do in our partnerships, it needs to be about releasing and supporting all of that, because that's where the real regeneration will come from. And that's where the real ground value will come from. And so for me, you know, as we look at all of this, it's actually what can we do in New Malden, in Hook, in Chessington, in Tolworth, in Surbiton? What can we do to make those absolutely as valuable for those people who live there as the sense of we have to go to the town centre to do it? You know, it's interesting to watch what the City of London just announced a couple of days ago as it begins to reevaluate how the centre will work. Actually, there will be a stronger drive into this narrative of the local community and the local place. And that's where I think we need to put a lot of effort. You know, we are sitting on rich asset. not just in where we are geographically, and not just in terms of the heritage, culture, the river, and all the other elements, but more importantly, actually, the people who live here, who study here, and who work here. I listened to David Harkin in the conversation just before this, and he's saying stuff we've been saying for years, which is the best ideas will come from people. And you've got to create situations where, I've always said with any organisation, particularly large ones I've managed, is the best idea will come from the cleaner. All you've got to do is create an organisation where the cleaner feels confident enough to say, I've got an idea. And we need to do that now as a borough, is make sure that the atmosphere and the way we are talking enables anybody, wherever they are, to say, I wonder if. And we're there to listen to that and say, I wonder if we can make that come true for you.
Thank you, Robin. I was going to go to Kirsten. I just wanted to quickly ask if anybody had any comments which they want to kind of add on to what Robin has just said. But if there's no takers, I'll go to Kirsten. Kirsten, I'm sorry. I had this dilemma yesterday of always having to follow Robin. Now it's your turn. From Kingston First's point of view, there's a lot of work which you're doing about placemaking and reimagining. How are you seeing the dynamics going forward with this?
Well, I think it's quite interesting, and just to sort of pick up on Robin's point around what we've seen coming through through the pandemic is how much people really do care about their places and really do value the things that perhaps we hadn't really thought about as being valuable in the past. We've all probably appreciated green spaces, and we've appreciated clean and accessible and inviting open environments and safe spaces and so on and so forth. But people really value them now, and that, along with art and culture and recognising the importance of our heritage, is only going to get more important as potentially we have this moment in time to keep people loyal to their town centres. And I'll use town centres in a plural sense, because it is so important to be able to walk or cycle or pop to your local place and enjoy the amenities there, whether it's for a coffee, whether it's food, whether it's meet people or exercise. I think in coming back to Kingston, we've certainly seen that. Even in lockdown, people were really valuing and making the most of being able to walk through the town centre, around the town centre, up and down the river, even though everything was closed in it. They incorporated it as part of their essential exercise, and it was a nice place to spend time in. So just thinking about that, and then adding all of the business mix that we've got, and it's now starting to reopen, and the wonderful offer that we've got in the town centre, we're trying to prioritise and work in partnership to say, how can we continue to improve the experience in Kingston? So particularly looking at open spaces, so space on the riverside at the moment, and memorial gardens, that we're working with the community in its broadest sense to say, how can we improve those spaces and make them better places to spend time? And Ian's touched on, there's a live competition at the moment that's inviting could be students or established architectural firms to reimagine and rethink the public space that connects the back of John Lewis, so the Kingston Bridge, up to Canbury Gardens. These are all quite little spaces, but all important spaces when we think about how people engage with, use and experience the town centre. And I think just taking a step back, one of the reasons that we're able to kind of think about how we improve these spaces and how we do that in a coordinated way in Kingston at least is just before the pandemic started, there was a partnership established between ourselves, the university, the GLA and Kingston Council, where we started to have a conversation about how can we set a bit of a blueprint for how public space investment comes forward in the town centre. And that looked at quite strategic projects in the town, but also some really quite small and tactical projects, which all members of the community, whatever your interest may be, could get involved and help be delivered. And that work was called the Reimagining Kingston Town Centre Streets and Spaces Strategy. And And it's great to see that strategy start to make projects or help projects come to life. So that's some of the work that we're doing in the town centre. But I have to say, what's been really exciting is seeing how people really have valued what I think we all know is important, or we will have known is important in places, but it's just been completely elevated in terms of space, people's experience moving around the town centre, and those green and blue assets that we've got in Kingston.
Thank you, Kirsten. I really like that perspective that there's small areas which can change and bigger areas. I think sometimes we all just keep hearing what's big, what's new, there's this and this, but actually the smaller things can go a long way to give a lot of satisfaction to people. Jen, what's your take on this in terms of, you're obviously working with a lot of partners on the place and reimagining. What does this really mean to yourself and to the university?
Well, I would absolutely concur with what Kirsten has said around the reimagining work we did in the town centre. And it's something that the university was really keen to play a leading role in, and because the place is so important to our students, and I think that sometimes needs to be shouted about louder, that our students are part of the community and they are going to shape its future and shape the borough's future. And I think the conversations we've had around how important space is now post-pandemic, I think for mental health and for just having spaces to just congregate in, talk to people, have informal meetings. I think there's many places in the borough that can do that, the town centre being one. And a lot of the work we did with reimagining was really to give community groups permission to really innovate and think of ways in which they could bring the public realm to life. And it's been really, really encouraging to see how that has actually happened now. We didn't want a strategy that would just sit on the shelf and go around and no one actually does anything about it. We wanted something that would really engage. And I think we're absolutely seeing that come to fruition now. And the benefits of this work have really helped to transform the vacant Undercroft and the public realm improvements in the Riverside that we've been speaking about. We've worked with Kingston First on the development of a Kingston Sculpture Trail, and there's many other projects within the town centre of different scales that have really come to life. We're also looking at how we can work throughout the borough. So I take Robin's point, it's not all about the town centre. So we're looking at Tolworth and our land there. The university has a big sports ground, and how we can work with the community groups to bring the green spaces that are much needed to Tolworth. And I know Robin's doing a lot on that space at the moment. And then nationally, we're working on a national influencer campaign really to raise awareness around the value of creativity in place. And that's, I think, been really important to how we've really been able to bring this reimagining work to life. And our student union and Studio KT1 have been working on creative meanwhile space on Fife Road, and they got funding through the GLA and RBK to provide a new hub for local community and part exhibition, galleries, workspace and shops, and will house a mixture of artists, creatives and business support, and is open to the whole community. And I think it's exactly that sort of solutions that we need to be really encouraging, and I think that placemaking work is so important, but it's really important that it brings everyone together, not just the usual influencers who come and say this is how we should do things. It's about encouraging that innovative thinking, and I think that's really exciting to see how it's going to progress.
Thank you very much, Jen. Just very quickly, this last point, and then I will come to you, Jim, on the next question. So my apologies. But Robert, can I just get your sense of this place and reimagining with the creative sector and really the way that the Rose and the theatre, it was always a hub. I just wonder, how do you see people viewing the culture and the creativity sector like that going forward?
I mean, to me, Kingston, as Ian's alluded to as well, is pretty famous for its retail. I think retail will come back in a very different way. I think by definition it'll have to change. It's really encouraging that small retail is coming back, because I do think that the high street will have small retail back. But to me, culture is one of the things that knits communities together. That there are many things, and I think that as the borough, Kingston First, the university, other organisations put culture into that emergence, I think that's really important to make Kingston more famous for culture. I often joke, I wish there were 3 theatres in Kingston and 5 art galleries and whatever, because being a single building beacon of culture, that sometimes is difficult, because Kingston is full of very cultural people, but we are the only sort of big bit of real estate. And if there was more real estate doing culture, I think that would be very good for the borough, and being selfish, it would certainly benefit us. So no, I'm very excited about it. I think particularly the work around the library and the museum and integrating that. I mean, to me, the town is sorry, I'm talking about the town rather than borough. The town is rather sort of divvied up partly by roads, and I think any work that we can do to use culture to bridge those barriers and bring the library and the museum into the town, obviously bring the Rose into it, whatever's going on in Canterbury Gardens, whatever Robin's doing in the Undercroft, which is hugely exciting, I think can only be good as we redefine what we want Kingston to stand for.
Thank you, Robert. Before I move on to our next question, there are a couple of questions in the chat which I'm going to pick up on a little bit later. But I want to get Jim involved, because I think this next area is going to touch on to a lot of areas which we're going to work on. So basically, the crystal ball of future business growth forecasts a rise in digital skills, but green skills and the transition to the green economy is going to play a major part in the business environment. Can Kingston position itself to be a major player in the green economy and in turn attract investment? It's basically, can we create a much better green attitude which can bring different kind of diversity of businesses and skills into the borough? And this is an area which I know, Jim, this is your area of expertise. So how would you address this, please?
I think the simple answer, can Kingston kind of take advantage of this? I think yes, it can take advantage of the development of a green economy, and in fact it has no choice but to take advantage of this. I think we can look at the green economy across a number of dimensions. There has always been a green economy in Kingston, as there has all over the country, with development of specialised technologies applied to the environment, waste reuse and recycling, new products, services. That's always been there, and it's grown. But I think the whole green economy agenda has taken on a completely different impetus for several reasons, but one of the big reasons is the UK government's commitment to achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And that is enshrined in law. That is a legal construct. And the implication of that is it will flow into all parts of the economy, and actually all parts of our lives as well, through regulations, through new standards, through other parts of the legal system, through kind of new ways of doing things, new ways of kind of behaving, and it will yield all sorts of kind of natural changes. And it's obviously driven by concerns about climate change fundamentally. But UK government prides itself on being the first government in the world to enshrine this in law, so it will have a direct impact on the economy. And the pathway to net zero is really about decarbonisation. It's the decarbonisation of those big parts of the economy which emit a lot of carbon emissions. It's the transport sector, it's the energy transmission and supply sector, it's the built environment and the construction sector, it's heavy industry, as well as everything to do with buildings. And those will all have to decarbonise. And the decarbonisation of these big parts of our economy means that we need new products, we need new services, we need new ways of doing things. We're going to use electric vehicles, not vehicles with internal combustion engines. We're going to heat our homes with renewable energy. We're going to have to access that renewable energy. We're going to build buildings in a different way. We're going to have to retrofit all of the buildings that exist in the borough at the moment. It's going to be an awful lot of activity. It's going to create a lot of new jobs. This is the the big benefit. It's not just about addressing climate change. It's going to create a lot of new jobs. It's going to provide the basis for new businesses to start. It's going to create the basis for existing businesses to diversify into new products and services. So there's a whole range of new opportunities that can come out of this process that is taking us to net zero and is ultimately combating climate change. I think the challenge, it's a challenge for Kingston, it's a challenge for every part of the country really, is how the business community itself is facilitated in a way that it becomes enabled to take advantage of these opportunities. And there are some parts of the business community maybe already involved in environmental types of businesses who may well understand this and see the opportunities very directly. There will be other parts of the business community for whom this is quite intangible still, and perhaps there's a struggle to see the direct relevance. So I think going back to your original question about partnerships, then kind of facilitating businesses to take advantage of these processes is about partnerships. It's about national government working with local government. It's about local government working with the business community. It's very importantly about university sector, as Jennifer's been talking about already, providing skills development. There is currently a huge skills deficit in terms of all of the products, technology, services, all of the activities that are going to be part of getting to net zero. So being able to take advantage of business opportunities also means being able to access a pool of skilled labor, workforce that's on hand. Getting access to finance, new types of finance, green finance, also very important. So there's a huge opportunity. And it's an opportunity for Kingston as well as other places, but it needs to be facilitated through partnerships and different types of activity, I think. The role of the further education sector, I think, is very important. The role of schools in helping to develop the workforce of the future. I think all of this alongside some of the other things we've been talking about things like the changes in retail, the changing use of the high street, space becoming available on the high street. Well, maybe that's space for some of the businesses that can be part of the green economy. Maybe it's about training businesses for the green economy. Maybe it's about cultural services which are linked to the green economy. So I think there's a whole series of big agenda items here that we need to knit together in a way that it benefits the whole population of the borough. One thing COVID has done, as Ian was talking about, it's increased inequalities in the population, in the labour market. We already had inequalities. COVID has made those worse. Some people continue to work, some people don't. Here's an opportunity through the green economy to bring people back into the workforce in a way that generates high-level skills, higher household incomes, etc. But it's going to have to be a concerted, strategic effort across all of these different pieces, I think.
Thank you, Jim. That's very, very, very interesting information there. Ian, I can remember you called the emergency climate a little while back, and obviously the council is going to be needing to facilitate this, and it's a long journey. This isn't going to happen overnight, and it's very much, I sense this is very much winning people's hearts and making people understand it and want to do it rather than being told to do it. From the council's perspective, where are we going to push this?
I think it's a point well made, and some of you will be aware that I'm a fan of Kate Raworth's work, Professor Kate Raworth, on the donut economics, and I've mentioned this a few times with regard to how you can actually, there's a win-win with improving our local economies, national economies, global economies, and saving the planet. And I referenced in our strategic partnership meeting yesterday, Forbes, about Amsterdam, that they've signed off their first donut economic plan. We've already started that work, but we can't do it as a council by ourselves, can we? We rely on central government policy and working with local actors throughout the borough to shift behaviours, as you've said, Forbes. Some of the things that we're doing, the points, the developments I mentioned before around Unilever, around CRE, will create more sustainable buildings. You know, our plans, subject to members' approval, will reduce our CO2 emissions. You showed a fantastic picture yesterday, Forbes, of in our ancient market. Forgotten the maybe it was back to when the chamber was inaugurated in 1905. But what did we see in that picture? We saw lots of people in a busy marketplace on bikes. And what are we seeing now? Because of our infrastructure, we're seeing lots of people in our town centres riding bikes, a more sustainable way of travel. Fantastic to see. And you know, it's something that we'll continue to push. It's the right thing to do. And I alluded to this earlier, but the fact that we have, when you compare where we are in March to where we were in March last year, we've seen a 9% reduction in footfall. But when you compare that to a reduction of 38% in Greater London and 35% nationally, you can see how well we're doing at attracting people back into town centres. And given what we've seen with people using more sustainable modes of transport, people you know, using those different ways to help contribute to reducing our carbon footprint. Colleagues will know, some colleagues will know we had a citizens' assembly, and what came out of that was a number of actions. So for the council's part, we are planting new trees, we are installing new electric vehicle charging points as part of our contracting with organisations and social value. You know, there are requirements that we will insist on. People may have read about our exciting project with Thames Water to use sewage from the Hogs Mill to provide sustainable energy to businesses in the town centre area in the first instance, with a view to replicating that in other parts of the borough. And conscious of the time, I'll just quickly say our economic task force, which is making tremendous strides through partnership, is focusing on green recovery too, you know, promoting behavioural change, ensuring there's access to finance for green initiatives, green skills development, which Jim's alluded to, reskilling and upskilling, and decarbonising business transport. And when you think about the council as an anchor that links with health, police, the voluntary sector, our business community, and TfL, central government, we are in a great position to expedite and seize the opportunity here so that our people now and in future generations will see the benefits, both in terms of their health, but in terms of economic prosperity.
Paul,
Thank you.
Sorry, can I jump in? You did say you wanted to actively encourage this sort of anarchy. So, you know, I'm picking up on this green economy element. I think it's fascinating, and it links to one of the questions in the thread, which is around heritage. Exactly. You know, Kirsten mentioned, you know, basically a lot of the stuff we're doing we knew. And I think that's a really interesting message, because it's been historically about priorities, what we've chosen to do. And I was involved in a thing called Industry Year, and there was the guy who chaired it came up with a lovely statement, which was, our backs are so far against the wall we can't read the writing. And basically it was a witness that we were losing our industries, and the growth of the green industry is without a shadow of a doubt a place that we need to get to. We're proposing that the future be built on 4 pillars: more local, more equitable, more mutual, and more sustainable. And the sustainable is absolutely key and core to all of that, because we don't have a future without it. But I find it fascinating that 20 odd years ago, longer still, Kingston had a thing called the Green Fair. And that Green Fair was absolutely visionary in what it was talking about: alternate forms of energy, looking to reduce footprint, etc. The people who organised it at the time were regarded as hippie nutters. This was a complete waste of time. Why on earth are we bothering? We've caught up and realised that's the case. I think what I'm going to say is, yeah, do you know what? There are people talking to us now with voices we can't hear, and they're telling us what that future is going to look like. And unless we tune ourselves to listen to those people, we're going to carry on in the same way, and we'll be visited once again by something as dramatic which will disrupt us. We were saying ages ago, a wind has been blowing through the town and through our lives, and we just weren't changing our sails. Well, COVID is a gale, and it's blown us over. But how we stand up now, I think we've got to avoid going back to big organisations know best, they'll lead us through it. Actually, no, they listen, they hear, they respond, and the answers will lie with people. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you very much. That's what I'd like to hear. I'm conscious of the time. We've probably got about 5 to 8 minutes left. So what I'm going to do, I mean, I can't believe how fast the time has flown by. I'm going to put you slightly on the spot and just say, looking to the rest of the year, I just want you to kind of summarize it a little bit, quite succinctly, how you view your kind of area for the rest of the year. So I'm going to start with Jen. From the university's perspective, sorry, to the end of the year, what kind of mood? What's the sense? Is it positive? Is it anxious? Is it determined? Where do you see the rest of the year?
I think, well, I would say determined, and we're determined to give our students the best possible experience at the moment, and to ensure they progress. We're obviously navigating the government's guidelines. We'll be waiting to see what they say at the end of June around social distancing. We very much hope to have all our students back as normal in September. And we are trying to ensure that we are ahead of the game. So we are influencing policy. We are out there on the political and key stakeholder stage within the DFE, that's the Department for Education, and we're really trying to ensure that we're really protecting the campaign I mentioned earlier around creative education, because there is some policy risks around that from government at the moment. And that links also to the pipeline within schools on creative subjects. So I think that's going to be a real priority for the university over the next, up until the comprehensive spending review in the autumn, to really get our voice out there and really champion what we stand for. So that's in a nutshell where we're going.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jen. Bob?
Yeah, I'm generally very much an upbeat confidence. I think that already we're, due to what we're seeing generally in the market, does suggest that companies, individuals are really stirring forward and trying to look now positively for the future. I think there is a number of areas, and this very interesting, that's come out of the forum today. Ian touched on the question of the vacant retail units and some of the vacant units in the town and how to address this. I would like to see some stronger link up between the partnerships and ourselves with the council and how to deal with these premises. There could be, can we turn empty shops into health hubs or other interesting ventures that's going to generate that form of activity into the town on the back of what we may see with increased employment occurring with companies returning to their business. You know, Unilever, for example, is a great story for Kingston. It's already in the property industry. It's created a huge amount of interest. Why this is happening? I mean, there's no other news throughout the UK as big as the deal that's happened here. And of course, it's again turning people's minds, is looking at Kingston as a sector that where businesses might start to focus and look to take in premises. And again, something that I would like the council probably to have a review of their planning positions to try and help to again generate these businesses to be able to take premises in the area. There is much more flexibility on planning, and I think we sometimes find that planning departments still are a little bit reluctant to assist in helping those occupiers actually moving into premises, and I think that's something that should be addressed by us to help on that side. But overall, yeah, very much on an upbeat view.
Thank you, Bob. And I'm sure you've thrown a few challenges out there for Ian and the council. Kirsten, I'm sorry to nudge you a little bit. What's your sense for the rest of the year?
I will try and be quick, Forbes. So I guess there's two things for us to be focusing on for the rest of the year, and that is supporting businesses and organisations operating in the town centre through their recovery year. Let's not forget, it has been the most incredible economic shock that they've been through, and it's wonderful to see people back in town centres supporting places. But there will be residual issues that businesses are going to have to spend time recovering from. So I'm confident about the future, but let's not forget there's some work to do there. The second thing that we're absolutely focused on is thinking about our public spaces and our streets, and activating, if we possibly can, units that can be activated. And all credit to KT1 Studio as part of the School of Art for really showing how you can change and transform meanwhile space in quite a quick way, working with a really forward-thinking landlord as well, who also wanted to move quickly. So streets and spaces and thinking about how they can be improved are also on our mind.
Thank you, Kirsten. Robert, your man with say things in few words.
I think I'm struggling. I've moved on to my phone. I think we have to be, well, there is a huge pent-up demand for culture. We know that. What we're keeping is, is customer anticipation of wanting to come into closed environments, which we don't know yet. But no, the sense we get in the arts across the whole theatre sector is there is a huge pent-up demand, but still some cautiousness around returning to darkened theatres where everyone sat next to each other.
Thank you, Robert. Ian.
Thank you. I'll try to be succinct. We've mentioned about the place, and we've made a lot of reference to Unilever, and I'm going to speak to Bob's point here. The conversations with that particular organisation on that deal, and I spoke to Alan Jope myself, they were interested in the place, the assets that we've all talked about. We talked about great education. We've not mentioned the college yet, so a shout out for the college, because they're fantastic here too. But they also were interested in the green spaces, the state of the public realm, the fact that we do have this tremendous history here in Kingston, and a great health and care system. The council's an outstanding provider. So, when we spoke to the agents there, Bob, speaking to your point, they said in terms of the planning authority and the support, it was like nothing they've seen before. It was slick. They were very clear that we were open for business, but we were also very cognizant of, the different perspectives with regards to that deal. Not everybody was for it, and I understand that, and I really understand people that objected to it. The second point I'd like to make is around the recovery. And again, whilst we are buoyant, and I'm optimistic, Forbes, about the recovery, I mentioned V and W, and I'd like to have a conversation with Jim about this a bit more. But if we recover, we'll go back to a situation. That's why I'm very cautious about the word recover, to a situation where the survival rate of businesses had declined. So we've declined in Kingston from 62% 3-year survival rate plus down to 56%. We don't want to go back to that. We want to learn from that, and we want to ensure that there is a continuous uptick in this recovery, which means continuing to identify those growing industries. No time to mention them right now, but they are growing industries, and we can seize the moment here and take advantage of them. And the final thing is, let's not forget those most harshly affected from the pandemic in terms of inequalities, and our micro businesses. 93% of our economy consists of micro businesses and organisations. And as someone in the chat talked about how they can be better involved, Forbes, and we need to pick that up and see how a broader church of stakeholders can be involved going forwards. Sorry about rushing at the end there. I'm just constantly.
No. I've managed to get Amanda to just give us a few more minutes. Great technology. Can I come to Jim and then to Robin? So Jim.
Thanks, Bob. I agree with what's been said about kind of positive signs in terms of kind of recovery, bouncing back. I think the challenge will be to make sure for Kingston that is a sustained recovery. There's still a lot of uncertainties in the macroeconomy, and I think it's a case of building in resilience into Kingston's business base to make sure that that recovery is sustained locally, and all these things that we've been talking about, all these benefits can accrue. On the points that Bob, Kirsten, Ian are talking about in terms of kind of revitalizing the high street, using vacant space, I mean, I absolutely agree. It's a partnership between the building owners, private landlords, private sector, and the local authority working very creatively and innovatively together to activate space. And it is about public sector coming back into the high street and culture on the high street. I think that's absolutely fundamental. Robin's point about the top down and the bottom up and getting ideas from the level of the community, I think that's also very important in the context of the green economy. The green economy, decarbonisation, net zero, it represents a fundamental structural shift in the economy of the whole country and other countries. Last time we had one of those, early 1980s, it left an awful lot of people behind, and we're still dealing with the consequences of that. I think we cannot let that happen this time. There will be top down because there has to be policy certainty in order to invest for the future, but we need to take everyone along with us. We can't embed those inequalities anymore. So the community level, enabling participation, enabling skills development, enabling new entrepreneurial ideas coming out as part of that, very, very important, I think.
Thank you, Jim. And Robin, I think you probably echo all of that.
Oh, if that's a lot easier if I just echo that, that's great. Thanks. I mean, first of all, again, Forbes, thanks so much for putting this on, because I think this has been, the time, certainly for us as speakers, has gone quickly. I imagine for our audience, it's dragged like there's no tomorrow. But I'm in the weirdest meteorological moment, because if I look out of this window, it's absolutely pouring down. And if I look out of this window, it's slightly grey, but lovely. And in a way, that sort of reality is also what we're living in at the moment. And we are going to make choices out of which window we look. And I love the fact that Bob is clearly a person who will look towards the sunshine. I think we're all scared, aren't we, that as we tread through this, we're going to go through difficult ground. But I think if we can keep our sense on what that big vision is, we can navigate it. And I'll reiterate our 4 pillars, which I'm pleased that the Kingston Strategic Partnership is part of, as well as is our health, of more local, more mutual, more equitable and more sustainable, because we cannot afford to leave anybody behind like we have done in the past. What COVID did was put a spotlight on the inequalities, and we should be ashamed that those were allowed to not just exist, but actually to grow. So my parting shot is, where's the people's place going to be in all of this? Where's the joy going to be? Where are the playgrounds? We always talk about creating playgrounds for adults, the places in which people can remember how brilliant they are, removed with the fear of falling over. And that's what we've got to do, because actually we quietly educate ourselves into fear, and we quietly educate ourselves into not taking chances. And this is the time for taking chances. So we're working on a proposition with the GLA, Transport for London, Network Rail and South Western Railways to look at the future of transport, but particularly outer urban and suburban stations and what opportunities they might offer as bump space, community space. Once you stop seeing them as places of arrival and departure, but actually destinations in their own right, those physical footprints are a brilliant and massive opportunity. We've got more stations in our borough than most areas. There are 363 stations across London where, there is great fun to be had here that will allow everyone to play. That is not in any way to dismiss the pain and the suffering that COVID has brought into people's lives. But the best way we can honour that is to try and give people a better, healthier, more enjoyable and more stable future.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you very, very much. The 2 things before I wrap up, there's up in the chat, there's the Kingston Let's Talk, and there is the survey to try and get businesses to give their thoughts, and particularly on vehicle tracking, electric vehicles, e-cargo bikes. So go to the kingstonletstalk.co.uk. I would signpost that on the 11th of May, Kingston Council with the Chamber of Commerce, we are beginning to unpick these elements of the green agenda with the Green Transition Roundtable. So that's May the 11th. And I just want to thank everybody again. Thank you for listening. Thank you for contributing to the chat. a big thank you to our guests to take out precious time from their extremely hectic days. But I think this is, I hope all of you have realised that there's a lot of people working hard, putting in 110% to try and keep Kingston nudging forward. It's going to take time, but there's a really goodwill and an immense spirit and drive in from large to small to try and get us back onto our feet again. So thank you all. We look forward to seeing you soon, and this is just going to be the first of many conversations, I'm sure, as we go forward. Look after yourselves, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Forbes. Thanks very much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.